Hello, and welcome to Good Day with Glenda.
Good morning. I'm Glenda Crump with the Mississippi Public Health Institute. This is Public Health Awareness Week, and we are so happy to honor all the many services that are provided through public health. Today, we're focusing on emergency preparedness, and we're very proud to have in the studio today the Chief Communications Officer for MEMA, and you'll learn about what MEMA is shortly. So, welcome Malary White, who is the Chief Communications Officer for MEMA. So, Malary, tell us what MEMA stands for and what are some of the services it provides.
Yeah, so we are the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. A lot of people have heard of FEMA. They're the federal. Well, MEMA, we are the state emergency response. And what we do is we are the state coordinating agency. We coordinate an entire state response for natural and man-made disasters. And that means we take 16 emergency support functions that we have, ranging from the Department of Transportation to the Department of Public Safety, and we coordinate the best way to serve the public when they're in need.
Well, could you elaborate on three specific responsibilities of MEMA when managing natural disasters?
So there are actually 4 pillars of emergency management.
Okay.
Mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Mitigation is rebuilding and making something stronger, building resilience, and being resilient. You would see a lot of mitigation projects following Hurricane Katrina. So that's reinforcing a building to make it be able to withstand a hurricane. Preparedness is what we do 24/7, 365. We have an entire office at MEMA dedicated to training our emergency management directors in all 82 counties and the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. I'm also a part of that training. I go out and I train folks as well. The best way to handle disasters, and we teach the incident command system of who's in charge and who reports to whom, and we try to help manage the chaos. Response is that immediate response right after a disaster, and MEMA comes in and we can provide different things. We can provide commodities, tarps, water, those types of things, but we also can call in the feds if we need to, if we need FEMA to come and help us. And then the recovery aspect, if you are familiar with Rolling Fork tornado, which happened on March 24th, 2023, we are in the long recovery phase of that. We have helped citizens there find temporary shelter. FEMA has come in and provided temporary housing units, and we're also helping the communities themselves go through something called public assistance projects. We help them in guiding them with those public assistance projects of rebuilding roads, rebuilding public infrastructure from your city hall to your courthouses. So those are the 4 pillars of emergency management, and there's a lot of things in between.
Well, I want to talk about one of the big things in between. How do you coordinate with all of these other organizations? Because I know there are other organizations you work with, and that has to be mammoth to do that. So how do you coordinate with other organizations, and who are some of the organizations you coordinate with?
Yeah, so I mentioned the emergency support functions. So we call them ESFs. We like to acronym everything, emergency management. And so there are 16 of those. And I'll give you an example. ESF 1 is the Mississippi Department of Transportation. As you can imagine, we coordinate with them a lot, especially after a natural disaster. The first thing we have to do are get the roads cleared so help can come in. And we also work very closely with ESF 9, which is search and rescue. We worked very closely with them. So before a disaster happens, we do something at the state. It's called Activate, and we activate all of the emergency support functions who work within the State Emergency Operations Center. It's located in Pearl. That is our MEMA headquarters. And so whenever we activate them, that is us telling them, you need to be on standby because we may be calling you to help. And like I said, there are 16 of them. One of them is mine, ESF 15, that's External Affairs. Information is just as important as food and water in a crisis. And that is my job. I work very closely with not just my team, but the public information officers from all the state agencies that are responding. We want people to understand whenever the state responds to a disaster, it's not just MEMA. It is an entire state response. It's MDOT. It's the Department of Public Safety. It's the Department of Health. Not only that, it's your non-governmental organizations, your Salvation Army, your American Red Cross, and your faith-based organizations too. They make up the whole community. Government is a very small piece of what it takes to rebuild and recover from an entire disaster.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it's very important to engage the community, and they are the stakeholders. So how do you engage the communities? You mentioned the faith-based organizations. How do you engage them in responding to the emergency?
Well, first off, it starts before an event actually happens. It starts with engaging them and getting to know these folks. So we bring them in to help train with us. We talk to them. We go to conferences with them. We discuss with them what our plans are, what our procedures are whenever we're responding. We work very closely with the Mississippi VOAD. It's volunteer organizations active during disasters. These are the ones who help bring in your 8 Days of Hope, your Mennonites Disaster Services, people who are still in Mississippi right now, helping folks recover from tornadoes. And so it's engaging all of these stakeholders beforehand. But of course, our most important, the 3 million Mississippians. And so we have public awareness campaigns. We are trying very hard in my office to do children's outreach. And so we go to schools. We host school tours at our building because it's a very cool building to bring people out to. It's one of the safest buildings in the state. And so that's why we're engaging the youth to get them to understand how to be prepared for a disaster. But then also we have another vulnerable population in Mississippi, and it's our seniors, our older adults. And so my team, we are coming up with a senior preparedness guide for them.
Wonderful.
That will be out hopefully before hurricane season starts, because that is a population that is very vulnerable to not just your tornadoes and your hurricanes, but to the heat and to the cold. Those types of disasters too can drastically affect them.
Well, I'm really excited about the senior plan. I have an 87-year-old father, so those kinds of things are important. How do you disseminate that information? How would folk get the senior plan and other information that you have?
So we partner and we work very closely with your assisted living facilities. We partner with a lot of them, especially right here in Jackson. They call us up, say, hey, can I get a box of guides? Absolutely, and it's free. And we give it to them for free because we have grants that help us in public education and trying to inform the public of how to prepare. That's the biggest thing. If people have that information before a disaster happens, they are going to recover a lot quicker than if they were uninformed.
Well, here at the Mississippi Public Health Institute, we do a lot with behavioral health. And we know that after a major disaster, there's a lot of mental health issues. Do you coordinate at all with mental health, Department of Mental Health?
We do. And whenever we bring in FEMA and ask them, they come with a crisis hotline as well to assist with folks, because we do understand that half of this is a mental battle. You're dealing with people who just went through the worst day of their life. They may have lost their family members, on top of losing a house, on top of losing their car, on top of losing their job. And so there is, a lot of people who feel defeated. And so we bring in those tools, but also we lean very heavily on the faith-based organizations as well. We relay a lot of information through them so they can relay it to the public, because people trust them.
Exactly.
People don't always trust the government.
Right.
But people will trust the pastor. And so we lean heavily on that. And it's also something that our boss our executive director at MEMA has instilled in us too, is taking care of your well-being, making sure that you can identify burnout and taking time to step away and recharge. I try to do that very much with my team because I've experienced burnout too. I mean, we currently have 21 open federally declared disasters. That's a lot on an agency that employs, on a good day, 180 people.
Wow.
And so we're a very small agency, but we may be small, but we are mighty.
Well, that's great. We see that. So, Great segue into my next question. Can you provide examples of successful interventions or initiatives led by MEMA in mitigating the impact of natural disasters?
So one of the things that we try to get people to understand whenever a disaster happens is a lot of people think MEMA comes with a blank check. Unfortunately, that is not how that works. If we see that people need individual assistance, that's whenever we have to bring in the federal government to assist us with that, if we meet the right thresholds. If we do not meet the right thresholds, we lean very heavily on our non-governmental organizations. But something that we've started at MEMA is encouraging counties to form something that is called a long-term recovery committee. And this long-term recovery committee can access something called the Disaster Assistance Repair Program, or DARP, because we acronym everything.
Of course.
And DARP, if you have a long-term recovery committee, you have access to DARP, which gives you up to $250,000 to help this community go in and repair homes. And we can't fully rebuild, but we can repair. So say a tree, maybe knocked down a piece of the house, but it's not completely destroyed. That long-term recovery committee can take advantage of these DART funds and help repair the home. And they do so by bringing in volunteers, because that $250,000 can be used to buy building materials only. We can't provide the type of labor that's needed, but we can provide money for the building materials. And so that is something that we're very proud of at MEMA. It's something that we are encouraging all counties to buy into, because it's been very successful in a county like Bolivar County. They've used it, and it's very successful in getting homes repaired after some of the disasters that they've had.
Well, what are some of the critical components of your emergency preparedness plan?
Oh, goodness. Communication, exercising the plan, having a plan to start with. You need to have a plan to start with before you do anything like that. We have something called the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. The state has it.
Okay.
If you printed it out, it would actually be about this thick.
I'm sure.
But it goes ESF by ESF, emergency support function, and it tells them this is your role during the disaster, and this is who you may need to. This is the support agency that you may need. It goes from a dam levee breach to a hurricane.
Oh, wow.
This is how we respond to this or that. But if I'm talking to the 3 million Mississippians out there, what they need to know for their plan is have multiple ways to receive your type of alerts, whether it's a tornado watch or a warning, something that can wake you up in the middle of the night. And we have something called the MEMA app. Just download the app. The American Red Cross also has a wonderful app that can do that. And you can actually tailor your app to your location. If you have a family member who lives, in Starkville, you can set a pin there and it will notify you, so you can call your family in Starkville as well. So we tell people that. For people who are living in flood-prone areas, where do you evacuate to? Do people know where you would evacuate to, so your family can, make sure they can find you? And practicing that plan, going over it. One thing that we've seen are schools dismissing during bad weather. And that's a call on the school that they make. But what if you're sending a child home to a mobile home? And do they have a plan in place if they are home alone of where they need to go in case of a tornado warning? So these are all things that we approach the public with. Everyone asks in the state, are you ready? Yes, we are ready. We train for this. We exercise for this. We need to make sure you are ready. As a homeowner, as a renter, as a citizen, are you ready? Because Mississippi really doesn't get a break from severe weather.
Oh, no. Well, we need to download that MEMA app today. You've talked about a lot of resources. What other resources and equipment do you have during emergencies?
So on the MEMA side, What we use in the background that a lot of people do not see is we have a lot of emergency contracts on hand. You wouldn't think that you would need it, but we have an emergency contract for ice. It's a hot commodity,
Yes.
or a cold commodity, but it's very important. You wouldn't realize how important ice and water are until you don't have it. And so during the Jackson water crisis, we had to use all of our water contracts. We have emergency contracts on standby for bottled water, and we brought in over 300 truckloads of water for that response. But like I said, it's not just a MEMA response. We utilize the National Guard. We coordinate with the National
coordination,
Guard.
yes.
And it's all of that. It's not just a MEMA response. It takes the entire state agency realm to be able to pull this off, because we're not only working with the National Guard. If you see a press conference and you see a sign language interpreter, that's the Department of Rehab, the Department of Rehabilitation Services. They're providing that sign language interpreter. If you're seeing how to deal with boiled water and what are the effects of that, that's the Department of Health telling folks this is what you need to do. If you're getting traffic alerts because of a disaster, that's MDOT, and we're all coordinating with each other on the backside and making sure that we are on one coordinated message to give out to the public.
Well, Malary, you're certainly wonderful at what you do. I can tell with your excitement. And Mississippi, I've read where Mississippi has been lauded for its emergency response, that we are really good at it. What do you attribute to the success in a good emergency preparedness situation?
And thank you for that. I feel like Mississippi, we get knocked down for a lot of things, but my goodness, we know how to respond to a disaster.
Yes, and we've had many.
We've had many. Unfortunately, we had we have the experience. I will tell you, it's the buy-in. It takes the buy-in from these people. We are not just state workers. We are people who wear the letters, and we wear the letters very proudly, because we want to make a difference. We want to make a difference in the people that we're talking with. We have an office in MEMA. They're called our Individual Assistance and Housing Office. And I call them my IA angels, because these are the ones that, if we open up a call center, these are the ones you get to talk to. And these men and women in individual assistance, they are so passionate about what they do, because they're caring for you like they would care for their mom, their dad, their sister, their brother. You're going to be met with empathy on the other side of the phone. And then whenever they're out in the field and you see someone with a MEMA shirt on, just know you're talking to someone. We live here, we work here. You are our neighbors, you are our friends as well. And while I may not have gone through the Rolling Fork tornado because I didn't live there, I did go through Hurricane Katrina. So I understand a sense of loss and hopelessness at some point. And so even though, again, we are a small agency, we are mighty with the commitment that we have to not just our 3 million Mississippians, but our commitment to our 82 counties and our Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, the EMA directors that we have to work with. And I think that's a big part of the success story. And I have to say it, just because he's my boss, I'm not saying this just because he's my boss, but our executive director has taken MEMA to a whole new level of just empowering us to, you have a vision, let's see where it can go. We created a children's outreach campaign, and we created a robot named Memite. And he is animated. He was animated and voiced by our videographer, and it was a way to just get kids interested in emergency preparedness, and he's been very successful.
Is Memite a mascot?
Memite is a mascot.
And he can go. He can go. Oh, he's animated. Okay.
Animated, but you can look at him and view all of his videos on our YouTube page. We are on YouTube, Mississippi Emergency Management Agency, and but not only that. On a more serious note, our IA angels, they are going through and building profiles of every single county in Mississippi, and we are looking at the Social Vulnerability Index, the SVI. I know you're familiar with that. The SVI tells us a lot of where we need to target resources where the help is going to be needed most. So for people who are not familiar with it, social vulnerability index is rated from 0 to 1. And the higher your SVI, the less likely you are to be able to recover from an incident by yourself. And so Rolling Forks SVI is 0.97. It's very high. And we knew that they were going to need a lot of resources, and my goodness, did they get it. The people who came from across the country, the volunteers who came in just to help. Like I said, government is only a small piece of this pie. If it weren't for the volunteers, I don't think we would see as much progress as we have.
Well, I like that you're using data to help you make decisions, using that social vulnerability index. That's really good. You've been in this with MEMA for
about 5 years.
5 years, and you came at the onset of COVID.
Yes.
And then tell me about your journey. There was one disaster after another.
Yeah, so I was brought on to lead our Business Emergency Operations Center. So again, another piece of that pie are businesses, the Targets, the Walmarts who want to help. And they do. They give out muck kits and those types of things. So I was brought on to handle that. I was really excited about it. But after some staffing changes happened in February of 2020, I accepted the position of Chief Communications Officer. And my goodness. So February, we had a flooding event in our capital city. March, we had our first cases of COVID. April, we had the Easter tornadoes where over a dozen people died. And then going into hurricane season, we had an unprecedented, we heard that word a lot in 2020, an unprecedented hurricane season with 30 named storms.
Wow.
And we had Hurricane Zeta that year as well, because we had to go all the way into the Greek alphabet. And so it was one disaster, one federally declared disaster after another that we were dealing with, and it felt like baptism by fire, but it also, I had a newfound appreciation, not just for what our agency did, but my goodness, what our counties do. The amount of work that they put in on the local level is remarkable. And some of those county EMA directors, emergency management directors, they wear multiple hats. They are not just the EMA director. They're the fire coordinator. They're, a mayor or something like that. They wear multiple hats, and they do a really great job of serving their citizens.
We're Mississippi strong.
We are.
That is wonderful. Who is your executive director?
Stephen McCraney.
Okay.
So he's a retired lieutenant colonel. He has responded from Hurricane Katrina, he was in the National Guard, to the BP oil spill. And he started at MEMA in, I believe, 2016. Okay. And he has brought all of that experience with him into our agency. And his motto is very simple: people, people, people.
Okay.
The people at MEMA, the people who serve our counties, the 82 EMA directors, and 83 with the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, and the 3 million Mississippians that we serve. That is what we have to keep in mind.
Well, we salute him and we thank him for his leadership. As we close, I want you to share how can people access your services, and what else do you want the public to know about MEMA?
I want people to know that while we may have limitations, while we may not be able to write a check for you and fix everything, I want them to know that we have a plethora of partners that we work with to try and assist in the best way that we can. And so we have a lot of information on msema.org, but if anyone is ever interested in having a copy of our disaster preparedness guide, if they want our children's activity books or our children's coloring books, it's the ABCs of MEMA, or eventually get a hurricane guide or our senior preparedness guide. All they have to do is reach out to us. They can email us or they can call us, and we would be more than happy to give them, send it to them, and it's all for free.
Great. Well, we'll have that information up on the screen. The number, the website.
Yes.
Is there the app? You would encourage people to download the MEMA, free MEMA app?
It is the free MEMA app, and I do encourage people to do that because, like I said, you can customize your weather alerts for what you want. If you want it for your area, so for instance, I have my family's here in the Jackson Metro, but I also have family that's in South Mississippi, so I monitor both locations. So if there's a tornado warning in either location, I can call them up and say, hey, you have a tornado warning. Mom, I need you to get to a safe place. But not only that, there's also checklists and plans. You know, what is in your go kit, and do you have everything you need? Our main big message that we do, and you'll hear us say it a lot, especially during hurricane season, but it's really year round, the first 72 is on you. And what that means is after a disaster, after something happens, the first 72 hours is on you, the individual. So you need to have at least 3 days worth of food and water and supplies. If you have special needs, a special diet, if you're diabetic and your insulin has to stay cold, these are all things and all checklists that we have on the app for you to go through.
Oh, great.
Also, can't forget our pets, a pet checklist as well. But the reason we say the first 72 is on you is because that's about how long it could take us to get FEMA here and get all of our resources, the roads cleared and everything, so we can start going in and setting up distribution sites if we needed to hand out tarps, water, meals ready to eat, those types of things.
Well, Malary, thank you so much. You've shared a wealth of information. We're so proud of MEMA and what you do, and happy to be a partner with you to get the word out about your many services. We want to encourage you to learn more about MEMA, download the app, access the website, be prepared. And we hope that during Public Health Awareness Week, you understand the importance of emergency preparedness and how wonderful we do it in Mississippi. We don't want emergencies to happen, but we know they do. So please be prepared and look forward to more information during Public Health Awareness Week. Thank you. Thank you, Malary.
Thank you.
We have with us today in the studio Ms. Candace Coleman, who is an external spokesperson for Entergy, one of our power companies here. So we'd like to talk to Candace about some of the things that Entergy provides and how they prepare for emergencies. So Candace, welcome to the Mississippi Public Health Institute. Thank you so much for having me. You're welcome. So tell me about Entergy. How do you all prepare for tornado season in Mississippi? Yeah, so Entergy and Entergy Mississippi, we believe in storm readiness 365, 24/7. We are always on call and standing already if severe weather does come through. Entergy Mississippi has great relationships across the country with other utilities in our mutual assistance program. We've actually been recognized by the Edison Institute for our mutual assistance in our storm preparedness and our storm response. So we have other utilities that we are able to reach out to during times of catastrophic damage to be able to help us out. And then we also provide that to them as well, right? But we also train. We are always training. We are always improving on our storm response after a storm has passed. So we always have a debriefing moment after storms to learn how could we have approached this differently? What are the things that we could have done to do better so that we can continuously improve on our storm response? And so we ask customers to also do the same thing. Have those conversations with your family all the time so that you can have a plan for what you would do if a storm was to come through and take power out for more than just a day. Have a kit ready, have a plan for any medical supplies that you need that may require that may require electricity. Do you have a kit? Do you have a plan for that family member who may need to use power for medical supplies? And so those are just a few things that we do to stay ready, and then we hope that other people do as well. So last year around this time, Entergy Mississippi's customers in the Mississippi Delta experienced an EF4 tornado. And unfortunately, that damaged hundreds of homes in the Mississippi Delta area. And it also damaged 700 distribution poles in the area as well. And so our crews were standing ready. And they were prepared. They were able to go in and to restore power to everybody who could receive power in that area within a week's time.
And so that's just an example of us being prepared for that and then being ready to act whenever we can.
So you've talked about how you prepare, and congratulations on the Edison Institute. That's an honor. So the general public, you mentioned the kit. Is there a checklist? What are some resources that the public can access to help them be more ready for storms?
Yeah, so we always point folks to our Storm Center online. In our Storm Center, there are different lists and pages that have all types of safety tips for if you're using a generator, safety tips for if there's flooding that is occurring, and then also pages where you can go and see that checklist. So some of those things that need to be in that emergency kit are non-perishable food items. Do you have candles and lighters for those candles? Do you have batteries, backup battery packs for your phone? Because if you are unable to charge a phone, how are you going to get our outage checks? When we do send them. So having backup batteries for your phone, flashlights, also checking your first aid kit and your medication that you have stored to make sure that they are not expired, because oftentimes those first aid kits, we don't use them often enough, and you may buy one and it may be in the back of your cabinet for years because you're not really using it, and then that one moment happens and some of your items in there are expired. So checking those regularly as well. I talked about generator safety for a moment. We always like to remind people as well, for those folks who do have backup generators at home, some people do, is to use generator safety as well. Read all of the instructions, because some of the hazards that could occur, electric shock could occur if you're using that wrong. Making sure you're not using it in the generator indoors. Reading those instructions and just making sure that you're handling it with care, because the worst thing that could happen after you already experiencing an outage is then also being in a physical emergency situation.
Well, I think what I've heard from people is they're most afraid of down power lines.
Mm-hmm.
What are some safety measures people can take when they're down power lines?
Yeah, the number one thing, do not ever touch a down power line. You have no idea if it is charged or not. There's no way to look at a down power line and telling if it is charged or not. So the best bet is to always stay away from a down power line. Also, staying out of waters that have down power lines or down power poles in them, because electrocution could also be a hazard there. We also tell folks to make sure that when you do see a line worker in your area, if you do see a line worker in your area doing some restoration work, giving the crew some space, staying back. Our line workers, they are superheroes. They're essential workers. They are out there trying to get the power on as quickly and as safely as possible. We take safety very seriously. We own safety at Entergy. And so the last thing we want to do is to put one of them in danger with distractions. So we just ask people as well to stay away from the line workers, let them do their job. We know that it's kind of fascinating sometimes, and then sometimes it may be frustrating because your power isn't on when you want it on. But they need the space to be able to do their work and to do it safely.
Well, I know a lot of frustration for people when the power is out is how to get information. When are the lights coming back on? What do I need to do? How do people communicate when there is no power?
So one of the most important things that we tell customers is to make sure that they download our free Entergy app. And you can find that in the App Store, or you can go to entergy.com/app. And you can also sign up for outage text by texting REG to 36778. And if you have your account number as well as your zip code together, it will ask you for that. And then you can then enroll in outage text so that you can be updated on when your power will be restored to your home. And then finally, we also ask people to go to our View Outage Map online. You can find that on Entergy.com, as well as our Storm Center. So there's plenty of places to go to look and see when the power will be restored for your home.